So how in the world does a movie about the 2008 financial crisis, of all things, not only win an Oscar but become this huge cultural phenomenon? Well, today we're going to unpack the absolute genius of The Big Short. This is a film that didn't just explain a global meltdown. It made it intense, understandable, and believe it or not, darkly hilarious.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to peek inside the doomsday machine that was the financial system. Then, we'll meet the oddball heroes who saw the crash coming. We'll decode that Wall Street jargon that's designed to make your head spin, watch the exact moment the bubble burst, and then we'll face the gut-wrenching real-world cost of it all.
Okay, first up, a doomsday machine. And look, that's not just some dramatic Hollywood title. It's literally how the original book described the entire financial system, just teetering on the brink of total collapse.
Yeah, this wasn't just some catchy phrase to sell books. It was the terrifying reality. The whole global financial system was a ticking time bomb. And the truly insane part, almost nobody could hear the ticking.
The entire story, the whole thing, boils down to this one kind of wild idea. You have this small group of financial misfits who looked at the booming U.S. housing market, which everyone, and I mean everyone, thought was solid as a rock, and they saw a catastrophe just waiting to happen. So what did they do? They decided to bet against it.
So who were these guys? Who were these prophets of financial doom? Well, this part is all about that small handful of outsiders who saw the massive cracks in the foundation while everyone else was just enjoying the party at the top.
The film focuses on a few key players, all based on real people who, and this is the incredible part, all came to the same terrifying conclusion on their own. You've got the brilliant but super awkward Michael Burry, the angry at the world Mark Baum, the slick banker Jared Vennett, and the retired paranoid Ben Rickard, who kind of becomes the moral compass of the whole story.
And this brings us right to the title of the movie itself, The Big Short. So what does it even mean to short something? Well, to put it simply, it's a bet on failure. You're betting that the price of something is going to go down, not up.
It sounds kind of backwards, right? You borrow something you don't even own, you sell it right away when the price is high, and then you just wait. You wait for it all to crash and burn so you can buy it back for pennies on the dollar. That is how you short the market. It was an incredibly audacious plan, basically a massive bet against the entire American economy.
So how did they know what to bet against? This, right here, is where the movie's genius truly shines. It had to teach the audience a whole new and frankly intentionally confusing language that Wall Street had invented.
It all started here, with these things called subprime mortgages. These were the rotten bricks at the very, very bottom of the pyramid. We're talking about home loans given to people who, tragically, had almost no chance of ever being able to pay them back. So what did the banks do with all of these ticking time bombs? They bundled them all together into something with a fancy name. A collateralized debt obligation, or CDO. Warren Buffett once called these things financial weapons of mass destruction. And boy, was he right. They were specifically designed to hide all that risk.
And this is a perfect example of how the film breaks it down. Instead of some dry, boring definition, boom, they bring in the late great Chef Anthony Bourdain. He explains that a CDO is like a seafood stew. The bad loans? That's the 2-day-old fish you couldn't sell. You'd never serve it by itself, but you can chop it up, hide it in a fancy stew, and no one will know the difference. It's just a perfect metaphor. These bundles of loans were also sliced into layers called tranches. Think of it like a layer cake, but for financial risk. You've got the safest, AAA-rated stuff on top, and all the really risky, most likely to fail junk, the subprime mortgages, piled up at the very bottom.
And to explain that, the movie gives us another awesome visual, a Jenga tower. Ryan Gosling's character shows us that this whole massive structure is built on these really shaky blocks at the bottom. And once those bottom blocks start to wobble and fail, it's only a matter of time before the whole tower comes crashing down.
So how do you bet against a Jenga tower? Well, Michael Burry basically had to invent a way to do it. It's called a credit default swap. All it really is an insurance policy. He went to these huge banks and said, hey, I want to buy insurance on your housing market. And they literally laughed at him and sold it to him for cheap, thinking it was the easiest money they'd ever make.
You got to remember, for years, these guys were the laughingstocks of Wall Street. They were losing millions of dollars waiting for the crash, and their investors were ready to riot. But they held on, and then it happened. That doomsday machine that everyone else insisted didn't even exist finally went off.
And look,
this wasn't an overnight thing. It was a slow-motion train wreck. Burry made his first bet way back in 2005. By 2007, the defaults started piling up, and the bubble officially burst. And then, in 2008, the dominoes just fell, one after another, taking down giants like Lehman Brothers and kicking off a total global crisis.
And the men who saw it all coming, they were proven right in the most spectacular and, honestly, terrifying way possible. Their insurance policies paid out big time. Michael Burry's fund alone saw returns of nearly 500%. They had bet against the American economy, and they had won.
But here's the thing. This was not some happy victory. As our main characters were cashing in their winning tickets, the rest of the world was starting to pay a terrible price. Their big win was built on the ruins of the global economy.
And this gets to the real moral gut punch of the movie. You've got Brad Pitt's character, who asks his young partners, "Do you have any idea what you just did? You just bet against the American economy." They're celebrating making millions, but what was the actual human cost of them being right? Just take a second and really look at that number. 3.8 million. That's not just a statistic from the Federal Reserve. That is nearly 4 million families who lost their homes. 4 million lives completely turned upside down, all while Wall Street was playing its games. This is the real cost.
And the damage just spread like a virus through the entire economy. Trillions of dollars in investments just vanished. The credit markets that basically keep the world running, they froze solid. This is what triggered the Great Recession. Wall Street firms that had been around for 100 years were just gone.
So the film's big takeaway is pretty blunt, really. It was a toxic cocktail of Wall Street greed and these incredibly complex products, all allowed to run wild with very little regulation that brought the entire world economy to its knees.
You know, in the end, The Big Short did something truly masterful. It armed a whole generation of people with the language to understand a crisis that was designed to be impossible to understand. It explained how it all went so wrong. But the real question, the one it leaves us all wrestling with, even now, is has anything truly changed?